B'Vav Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Chav Vav. We're going to start on Daf Chav Vav Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the top of the Amud. We are continuing to learn about other invalid fuels other than the ones that are mentioned in the Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek. The last fuel that the Gemara speaks about is about balsam or balsam oil. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And as we learned before, there's 2 issues with balsam oil, why we may not use it for Neder Shabbos. Number one, there's a concept called Chamira Sakanta Meisura, that we give more weight to danger than to halacha. Not, God forbid, because we're not taking halacha into account, because a life you cannot bring back. And almost all of the mitzvahs, if you have to choose between life, you have to pick the life. And the tragic story that we just read, how a young woman, she was filled with balsam oil is very flammable, and the fire can jump. So number one, we're not allowed to light Neder Shabbos with balsam oil because it's dangerous. You're involved, you made it, you poured it, you can get burnt. And number two, it has a good fragrance. So you're going to say, so what's the big deal? No, it's a big deal, because that was the Rashi we had on Daf Chafei Amud Beis in the bottom. Just like everyone is familiar that we are not allowed to light a fire on Shabbos, and because of that, what happens if you have a lamp and you add oil on Shabbos? Rashi says you're chayiv of making fire. Even though the fire is lit, you're just adding oil. That's Rashi. So therefore, if you remove oil, you are chayiv biblically for extinguishing a fire, machabe. The oil is so geshmak that you might end up taking some of it without knowing that, even though you're not putting the fire out, but you're causing the fire to go out. And again, it's only indirect. And that was the Rashi that we have in the end of the Chafei Amud Beis. So that was the topic that we're learning about. So we're going to learn more about invalid fuels. We're going to actually start speaking a little bit more about the uniqueness about balsam oil, and then we're going to go me'inyan le'in. We'll see how, and we're going to start many dafim of Tumah Tara concerning the following. For something to be susceptible to becoming tamei, it has to be a keli, it has to be a finished product. If it's a garment, it has to be halachically defined as a garment. Now, of course, a garment is a garment. We are speaking now about pieces of material that are relatively small. They could be made into a garment for a baby. They could be made as to a patch. Some materials are not going to be used for wealthy people. Only poor people will use them as a patch. And basically, this is the big topic of, there's a machloikas. There's a difference, that will be the key, between tzemer upishtin, which the Torah specifies, between wool and linen. It's considered something more chashuv. There, even if you have a material only in the size of shalosh al shalosh, we have to remember, I'm talking to myself, shalosh without the hay means finger breadths. Another detail, finger breadths in halacha always refers to the thumb. So shalosh al shalosh, or bigger, if that patch is made out of wool or linen, is considered a beged, and therefore it's susceptible to becoming tamei. Kevin has a great picture. Then there is another step called shloisha al shloisha. With a hay, it's tfachim. And we will see a big machlokas Abaye and Rava. We're going to learn today Abaye. The next stuff will be Shitas Rava. Whether Abaye holds other materials, just a piece of, even if it's shloisha al shloisha, is not halachically called a beged. The Torah uses the words beged in many different areas, but in the context of tzoras, the Torah specifies beged semer, beged pishtim, and that will become a binyanav, that whenever the Torah says the words beged in all the other areas, it means semer or pishtim. And by the way, we're not going to learn about it today, but in Menachas and the sugi of tzitzis, that's the big question. When you make a bona fide beged, dalet kanfis, are you biblically mechuyev to put on tzitzis? And for example, the Rambam says the only beged upon which you are biblically obligated to put tzitzis, tzemer or pishtim. Even though we know that on pishtim we don't put tzitzis because they used to have tchelis. Many people go back to the tchelis, and tchelis can only be on wool. And even though that when you're doing the mitzvah, that's the sugi in Yavamas, that's only when you're doing the mitzvah. What happens if you're wearing it at night? So if it's made out of shatnez, when it's no mitzvah, you'll be violating. That's different topics. We don't paskin like the Rambam, but that's why many people are mahadid and they have the talos cotton made out of wool. It's linen you don't wear rabbinically. According to the Rambam, the only beged that you're fulfilling the mitzvah midoiraisa of putting on dalat kanfis is wool. All this is all connected to our. This is going to be basically the topic that we will begin with. That will be the main nekuda. Semero pishtim, even only shalosh al shalosh. Other begadim, either shloisha al shloisha, ooh, that's already chashiv, or not even that. Not even that. Okay, Chavra, let's start. Again, on Daf Chavav Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the top of the Amid. So as we just finished learning the tragic story, or let me word it in the positive, of the importance of for the mother-in-laws to be good mother-in-laws, that's in the positive. So let's speak a little bit more about this balsam oil. So we have a pasuk in Yirmiyah, and it says this pasuk is how this Nebuchadnezzar had with him, who we call Nebuzaradan, the chief butcher. He was probably the greatest murderer, biyadayim, of the whole history. We have the Gemara in Gittin, how many people he killed over the bloods of Zechariah, terrible stories. So he left a few Yidden in Yerushalayim selfishly. So it says over there that Umidaloi Sa'aretz Yishir, that from the poor people of the land he left. Who left? Nebuzaradan, Rav Atabachim, Nebuzaradan, who we call the chief executioner, the chief murderer. But why did he leave them? To be the Kardamim and to be the Yoigvim. Now, Chevra, I want you to know that the Pshat, we know Kerem, we're familiar. And Yegev, these words are normally used in the context of gathering grapes, pressing grapes. Didn't make sense. He wanted to get all the Yidden out of Eretz Yisrael. Why would he leave even poor Yidden that would never raise their heads against the Babylonian government for something that you can wind they had in Bavel? They didn't need it. That's why the Gemara is going to make a drasha that there were certain products that are only made in Israel, and the locals know how to do it. So for that, only for that reason, and he wanted the Babylonian government to have those products. One of them will be balsam oil. That's unique of the Holy Land. So cardamom, what's the cardamom? Get the pshat of cardamom means kerem. Says Gemara, no. Tani Rabbi Yosef, elu melakte afarsamoin. These are the ones who gathered the afarsamoin from the balsam, and which primarily grows in the region called En Gedi, all the way to Ramasa, and you know, when you live locally, you know how to do it better. So that's why he left them there. And Yoigvim, guys, normally Yoigvim is grape pressers. That's normally the interpretation. Here, again, the Rem is, what is unique to the Holy Land? Elut Sayodei Chalozin. The big, what is the Chalozin? But Chalozin was something that we, the Yidden, we knew what they are, we knew how to capture them, and you have to know how to make dye out of them. And they were primarily caught from the area that we call Sulamois Shal Tzoir, from the heights of Tzoir, of Tyre, all the way down to Haifa. So again, he's just pointing out anything that's unique to Eretz Yisrael, it's a given, is something special. That balsam oil is. So it's fakir. So he had no option other than to leave Yidden in the Holy Land for them to continue to manufacture these products. Now he left the Midalois, he left the poor Yidden. He didn't want to have any rebellion against them. You know, when you put people into Golos, you take away their power. When you are local, that's what Sanchedav did. He exiled the Roiv of every country, so he made an internal machloikas, so that's how he remained the king. Okay, back to other items that we may not use for hadlokais, neiros, Shabbos, kodesh. Ein madlikin, says the Braisa, betevel. Tevel is produce. Now we're speaking about oil. I mean, we're speaking about items that are flammable. We're not speaking about we're speaking about any product that otherwise would have been great fuel. Tevel it wasn't yet tithed. Now, even though it's going to go to the Kohen, it's going to go to the Levi, a Kohen cannot eat Tevel. Misa b'dei shomayim, machlokes Rashi Tosfos, do we look at it as Chulin and Truma mixed together? Do we look at it as a separate category? Not Negea. So says the Braisa that even, the way Rashi says, even Tevel, that's Tamei, Rashi writes, Kol Shchein b'tohar, says Rashi, you may not use to b'choil, you can't use it for choil. Choil means machlal. In other words, you can't use tevel. If you want to light your light, and if ain't tzarich you can't use it on Shabbos Kodesh. Kayoytze, says the Braisa, ein madlikin beneft lavan, white nafta, cannot be used during the weekday, b'chlal, as we'll see here again, like the balsam oil, it's very flammable and it's very volatile. It means it jumps. And therefore there's a sakana. And if you want to know what nafta is, you take a look over here on the Zoom, or you go Google, Rabbi Google. Ve'ein tzarich loimer b'Shabbos. Now, end of quote, says the Gemara. Bishleim neft lavan, I understand why we should never use it, mepnei shuhu off, because, it can set your house on fire. Aside of that, just to know why ve'ein tzarich loimer b'Shabbos, because it has a bad odor. And you know what people do now? During the week, what do you do if there's a bad odor coming from the oil? You put it out. Shabbos, no one is going to put it out. You know what you're going to do? You're going to move to another room. But that was the whole point that we learned about, whether it's Oinik Shabbos, all these new ones. You should eat the meal in light. You can make nice lights, but it cannot be in the dark. So that's why for sure not on Shabbos. Avol tevel tamei. Why can you not use it? Now, tevel tamei. You're burning it. What's wrong with it? You should know, Chavra, that kachim, that's tamei, is asur bahana. Right? Truma, that's tamei. We have to remember these rules. Truma, that's tamei, even though a kohen may not eat it, lechatchila, he can derive benefit from it. So what's the source that tevel tamei is something that is asur bahana? Based on a pasuk in Koirach, after the rebellion, the Torah reiterated many, but we have the total of the chav dalid matnois kuhana. So the Torah gives an intro over there in Koirach. Va'ani, this is God Almighty. Hineni nasati locha. Locha means surah kahanim. Es mishmeres terumoisoi. I have given to you the safeguard, guys, not to my truma in the singular, terumoisoi. However you pronounce your ivra, mitayur at the end, it's my trumais in the plural. So the Torah is speaking about two trumais, say Chazal. What is God Almighty referring to? B'shtei trumas hakosim medaber. God gave the Kohanim both truma Torah and truma tameya, like we mentioned, unlike kachim tamei, which is asur b'hana. Truma tameya, which may not be consumed, ha'iro, but you can derive benefit from it. Including if you have oil, you can use it for fuel. But the fact that they are juxtaposed one to the other, so we say the following: just like truma tahira ein lachaba ela mishas harama ve'elach, like we mentioned, a kohen cannot say, "Let me eat tevel," because the most important part of the separation is the truma gedola. Anyways, I'm a kohen. You can't do that. If a person eats tevel, even a kohen, just to see the severity of it, chayiv misibidei shamayim. So God gave him truma Torah only mishas afrasha ve'elach, af truma tameya. Yes, you can use it for fuel lechatchila, but you know from when ein lachaba ela mishas arama ve'elach. And before you separated the tithings, in other words, when it's called tevel has to be tithed. Tevel has to be tithed. So then you have, from the outset, you have truma tameya. What can you do? But no one can derive benefit from the fuel. It's asur b'hana. Okay, Gufa, this is going back to Daf Chafei Amud Beis. Guys, we're speaking about all different types of fuels. Now let's go back to this balsam oil. Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer, ein madlikin bitzari. We're not allowed to light Shabbos candles with balsam oil. Again, what were the two reasons? Number one, that should come first. That was the top of the Amid, because it's off. Because it's very volatile. It's dangerous. Number two, because taket smells so good. Sometimes things that are too good is not good. You're going to like it so much, you're going to take some of the oil out of the lamp. And that's mechabe. So now, he's going to give a third reason. Everyone is agreeing that you may not use balsam oil. But what's the third reason? Since balsam comes from the sap of balsam trees. Here we go. In other words, it's not juice. It's sap. You know what sap is similar to? We had in the beginning of the Pedic, pitch. Pitch cannot be used because it's not drawn easily into the wick. Anything that's coming out of an eitz, unlike a pri, like oil that comes from a pri, doesn't go good into the wick. So that's a third reason. Everyone is agreeing that's another time. That is why he's saying it's only me'atzei haktov, and anything that comes from eitzim is not good for Shabbos candles. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Kol hayotzim min ha'eitzim adlikim boy. He's taking it further, and that's not only balsam. Any sap, any material that is a product of eitz, we call that sap. No, it's not coming out of the fruit from the tree. It's coming out of the tree, or it's coming out of the leaves. That's something that Bechlal cannot be used. No. He's just broadening it because Rabbi Shmuel is Rabbi Shimon Elazar is focusing on sari. The Brisa is beginning about sari. He's broadening it. Okay, and Rabbi Shmuel ben Broika Omer, I'll tell you more than that. Ein madlikin ela beyotzim min apri. He's adding. It's not just, don't focus that which comes from the eitz is not good. It has to come from a pri. Now, what is he excluding? So Rashi reminds us. Rashi says, La fuke shemen dogim. Shemen dogim, many Rishonim say, means the innards of the fish. They're not good. Again, they're not good meaning they're good fuel, but they don't go easily into the wick. The fire is going to flicker too much. Or itron and sari. Okay. Now, Rab Tarfon Omer, ein madlikin ela b'shemen zayis bilvad. This is a very, very stringent opinion. We don't paskin like Rab Tarfon. He says you can only use olive oil when he's for Shabbos. So when he said that, Amad Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri Araglov. No, there's the normal argument in the Beis Medrash. Then you have when you made a statement and the oilam cannot tolerate it. So then they stand up. And V'amar, and he tells the Rabbi Tarfon, Azoi, you tell me, Mayasu Anshe Bavel. What should all of the Yidden do in Bavel? She'ein lohem elo shemen shum shemen. Maybe the big Gevidim, they have money to import it from Israel. The sesame seed oil, that's their oil. Umayasu Anshe Madai. She'ein lohem elo shemen agoizim. They have nut oil. Umayasu Anshe Alexandria over there in Egypt. She'ein lohem elo shemen tsenoinois. They have radish oil. Umayasu Anshe Kaputkia. She'ein lohem loikach v'loikach elo neft. Now guys, nafta lavan is what we mentioned before. Stam neft. So don't say that you can only use olive oil. Elo ein lecho elo masha amru chachamim. This is so classic. In other words, we have a Mishnah. The Mishnah on Daf Chafam Beis, the beginning of Perek Sheni. They already told you what you can't use. What do? From a Yidden, we constantly were more machmir. You can't do this, and also not this. At the end, only thing that was left was Shem and Zayis. So he says, you know what? Let's go back to what we have in the oral Torah. That which it says in the Mishnah, ein madlikin. That's it. And therefore, he's saying, umadlikin b'shemen dogim. You could use shemen dogim. Don't say only good element apri. You could use itron. Now guys, itron, I want you to know, itron, if you have a picture, comes from pitch. Pitch, the Mishnah says you can't use. But itron is good. It goes better. It feeds the wicks better. Shemen shuzuri yomer madlikin b'shemen pekuos. Now pekuos is some sort of fruit or plant that is similar. It's in the gourd family. If I'm pronouncing it correctly in English, it's called kolaknith. I'm happy Danny Fishman is not here. He would be shouting. And it's similar to a watermelon. You have all different. Let's see if Kevin can find a picture. Good luck to you. Ubeneft. You could. Sumcha says like this: anything that is extracted from flesh, ein madlikin boy. The only exception to that is shemen dogim. Problem is Sumchas and Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri is the Tanakama is saying the same exact thing. All right, Rashi says Sumchas hainu Tanakama. Tanakama means Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri that everyone agrees. Whatever the Mishnah says you can't use, including chaylev. Chaylev is included. Chaylev is yotzim and abasar. And the only, which cannot be used, the only product that comes out of flesh that could be used is shemen dogim. So here again we had this at the end of Daf Chav Daled Amud Beis. The nafkamina will be if you have a material that is in itself not good, but if you add a little bit of good oil has this nature that it elevates all of the oils. Do you make a gzeira or not? So that was discussed on Daf Chafal of Amud Aleph. Who quoted this? Rav Beroina Amarav. So the nafkamina between Sumchas and the Tanakama, which is Rabbi Yechanan Nuri, will be one agrees, one doesn't agree. But here again, the Gemara says, "V'loi mesaimi." We don't know how to figure out from the words of the Braisa which one takes which opinion. Mamish to what we had on Daf Chavdalad Amud Beis. Okay, so now because of the mention of Kol Hayotzim Min Ha'etz, that Kol HaYotzim Min Ha'etz, when it comes to Neidas Shabbos Kodesh, is not qualified. Who said that? Rab Shimon ben Elazar. We're going to now make a link. Another statement of the same Rab Shimon ben Elazar concerning products that come from Eitz, Tuman Tara. And that's going to go for a couple of daf. The amazing Tuman Tara sugyas that we have not enough, but at least that's chaparain as much as we could. Says the Beraisa. Chevra 3 lines from the bottom of the Amid. Tanya Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer. Kol HaYotzim Min Ha'etz. Eitz means, by the eitz doesn't only mean a tree, it means a plant. Any product that comes from a plant from which you make material, last line in the Amid, Ein boy mishum shalosh al shalosh. When we spoke out in the intro, that if you have a cloth that's made from fibers, either of wool or of linen, not, God forbid, together, one or the other, even if the size of the cloth is only shalosh, without the hay's finger breadths, it's considered chashuv enough, it's a beged, l'may nafkamina, that it's susceptible to becoming tamei. Whenever you're going to read the word tamei, never think it's tamei. It means it's susceptible. You have to know many dinim, you have to have some source of tumah, you have to know what halachic contact means. It doesn't only have to be touch, you can have tumas oil, you can have hesed, but it has to be susceptible to becoming tamei. The dinim of shalosh al shalosh is kol hayoytze ein by mishum shalosh al shalosh. Now guys, 1 second. Flax is the exception. Yachapt. Wool, I get. Wool is something b'chlal, otherwise comes from an animal. Pishtan is called hayoytze min ha'etz. Again, eitz doesn't mean only a tree. Pishtan is a plant, the flax plant. So aside of that, it's not susceptible to it. And therefore, let's jump a moment to Hilchos Sukkah u'mesachechem boy, because the basic prerequisites that the Mishnah writes regarding kosher schak, it has to be something that's gidulei karka, not animal, but and now it has to be disconnected from the karka. But if it's now so readied that it's considered a product that could become tamei, also it's not valid for schach. So therefore, since a product that yoytzim min ha'etz, even if it has shalosh al shalosh, is not makabel tuma, it's perfect. That's perfect schach. Or therefore umesachin boy. And what's the big exception? Pishtan. Pishtan shalosh al shalosh is makabel tuma, and therefore, even though it's a product gedulei karka, even though now it's not connected to the karka, since it's makabel tuma, therefore you cannot make schach out of shtikalach of shalish al shalish or bigger from pishtan. Okay, now like we mentioned, the big question, Abaye Rav, this is a very important topic, is regarding the other begadim, the other materials that from which you make other begadim. Amar Abaye, Daf Chav Vav Amid Beis, that you should know, our Rab Shimon ben Elazar, the statement that we just made, and the Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael, Amru davar echad, they are of the same opinion. Rashi, Tap Rashi, Rab Shimon ben Elazar, v'tana devei Rabbi Yishmael, Amru davar echad, the mehecha teisa le Rab Shimon. Where did Rab Shimon learn lema'ute shar begadim mituma? How did he get that? I mean, pishtan, he's moida. Flax, shalosh al shalosh, is considered a patch of beged enough that it's called halachically a beged, including ledinim, tumentara. How did he know that that's only for, where did he get it from? It must have been because of that which Rabbi Shmuel, Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel. Ilav the East lay the Tana Rabbi Shmuel. Okay. And Oy Bazoi, Rashi has a very important nuance that, as we'll learn in a moment, Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel isn't only speaking about other items that come min ha'etz. He only mentioned that because he was speaking about what's good for schach or nach. Schach has to come from gedulei karka. As we learn in Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel, he's speaking about polyester. I know there was no polyester then, but he's speaking about any begadim. His emphasis will be that how biblically beged means either tzemer or pishtan. Okay, let's go inside now. So Rab Shimon Elazar Hadamaran. Third line from the top. What's the tone of the Devei Rabbi Shmuel? Mahi, the tone of the Devei Rabbi Shmuel. Hoyil v'nemru begodnim b'toyra stam. Chevre, in Tumas Shiratzim, the Torah uses the words beged. When it comes to Tumas Meis, the Torah uses the words beged. When it comes to Shichva Zera, over there in Mitzoira, the Torah uses the words beged. When it comes to tzitzis, the Torah says al kanfei bigdayim. When it comes to Tumas Tzora'as, because the three is person, home, begodim. In the wrong order, I just want to leave begodim for the end. So there are many different areas in the Torah where the word beged is mentioned. So says the Brais of Rabbi Yishmael that Sosam, 1 second, Torah Yishmael, Nemru begodim b'Torah stam. In other words, the Torah never clarified what fibers, what materials are needed for you to consider it biblically a garment. However, in one of the cases that we just mentioned, which is in Tumas Negoyim, Parat Locha Kosav Be'echad Mehem, and the Torah there specified Semeru Pishtim. And another important klal that we say every morning in the Yud Gimel Midos, that actually the Torah first used the words beged in Tumas Negoyim, right? Vahabeged, the Torah says, Kiye boy negat soras. That's called a klal, right? Vahabeged. And then the Torah says, Bebeged semer, Bebeged pishtim. That's your classic klal uprat, not klal uprat to klal, and therefore, what's the rule? Ein locha ella mashe beprat. So by Negoyim, no one debates that. By Negoyim, the way the Torah formulated the dinim of beged, it's clear there only if the beged is made out of either tzemer or pishtim is it susceptible to the parsha of tumas negoyim. So malhal and tzemer or pishtim says the Torah Rabbi Shmuel. Now what we call now a binyan av in every item that we mentioned, tumas shuratzim, tumas mates, shichva zera. When it comes to tzitzis, the Torah uses the words beged, af, koil, only tzemer upishtim. Now in the context of tuma, guys, in the context of tuma, it's what type of beged? The Torah says, oy beged, oy oir, oy sak, all these. What beged is susceptible? Only tzemer upishtim. Now, there's a big statement, because when Abaye is making this link, what Abaye is also saying by that if it's not tzemer upishtim, it's not shayach at all, biblically, to tuma. Okay, Rava Amar, Rava says, well, hold on. Not so quick. If you have a beged that's larger than our topic, we were speaking about, we're going back to Rab Shimon ben Elazar. When it comes to 3 on 3 finger breadth, which is much smaller, I agree with that. But don't end your statement by saying that if it's not Samar Pishtim, it's not susceptible biblically. Rava says no. If it's Shloi Shah, that's with the hay, Al Shloi Shah, then I'm not going to say that Rab Shimon ben Elazar will agree with Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel. They won't have the same opinion. Ike benayu. Meaning that Rab Shimon ben Elazar, how do you know that he only spoke about Shalosh al Shalosh? Why did he only speak about Shalosh al Shalosh? I'll tell you why. Because according to the Tana of Rab Shimon ben Elazar, you're right, any other fiber other than Samar Pishtim, if you only have Shalosh al Shalosh, up until Shloi Shah, taka nothing to talk about. But once you hit Shloi Shah al Shloi Shah, that's going to be considered a beged. No one is done, guys. We just read a brayso of Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel. Rav is not arguing with him. What he's saying is that Rav Shimon ben Elazar doesn't agree with that. But Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel, taka leislei. Abaya doesn't make that difference. Abaya puts them together because Abaya shar begodim, other fibers, even shloisha al shloisha, biblically are not makabel tumah. Okay, says the Gemara, look at the kul alma miyas. According to everyone, it's clear that shalosh al shalosh only bitsemeru pishtem edamim menagoyim minalon. That's a big question. No, guys, take a seat back. Yeah, we just said the Rashi klalo prat. I know that the Torah never spoke about shalosh. The Torah never spoke about shloisha. How do you get that? Where do you get that from? Now, it's a given that shloisha is considered something that's usable. You can make a little, I don't know, maybe a little 3 tfachim. It's like you can make a glove. You can make a little hat. It's shayach. 3 by 3, what are you going to make out of 3 finger breadths? It's like a patch. So how do you know that? And the answer is the Tanya. It says in a brayso, and this is a pasuk from the Tumas Negoyim. The Torah really says ve'habeged. But before we add the letters that are extra, the word beged, ein liyela beged, a proper beged, a bona fide beged. But this is the brayso. What happens if you have a piece of a cloth that's only the size of 3 on 3 minayin, that's also included in Tumas Tzoras? Says the brayso, the Torah adds the letters vav and hey, ve'habeged. Ve'habeged is a inclusive limud that you gotta get familiar with many braises to include even shalosh al shalosh. Frek the Gemara, how do you know that? Ve'emel rabbi shloish al shloisha. You just said beged means a beged. Beged is not about size. You know, people make a kinyan today with a gartel. What's the criticism? That the little gartelach that many people wear is not even 3 by 3. And the counter is, you're right, but it's a full beged. It's a full beged. No, it's when we're speaking about sizes, when you don't have a beged, you have a cloth. Oh, so maybe it's l'Rabbi Shalosh al Shleisha. So the Gemara says no. For that you don't need veha beged. Why not? Because v'lav kal v'chaymet. This is the answer. That I have a kal v'chaymet. What's my kal v'chaymet, guys? In the psukim there in Tumas Negoyim, you know what the Torah adds? That there are threads that are called shasi. Shasi threads are called in English warp. They are the threads that go to the length. Then you have other threads that go on the eidav. They're called the woof. They go on the width. Point is, the Torah says that threads, fibers, that are ready to go into the garment, they are also susceptible to tumot soras. Now think about it. If you have threads that b'chlal are not made into anything yet, if they are susceptible, l'metame, so shloisha al shloisha miboya. So it can't be that the extra words is to include something that we know from a kal v'chomer. But now the Gemara has the obvious question. Azoi, shalosh al shalosh is also more than threads. Why do you need to have the v'habeged? Why do you need that vav in the hay? So the Gemara says you're wrong. Big difference. Shloisha al shloisha. If you have a piece of cloth. For people in the shmata business, they love the sugyas. My father lived in this. 3 by 3, you can use it for everything. You're not going to use it only for a patch. See, a patch is something that poor people have to put a patch on the garment. Today you'll never find a patch. Today everyone is wealthy. Poor people need to put patch. So shloish al shloisha, since the chazu bein lanim bein lashinim, which is what? Like threads. Threads are good for everyone. Therefore, that, you're right, is learned from the kal v'chomer. But once you have a woven piece of cloth that's only the size of shalosh al shalosh, not everyone will make use of it. Threads have more value, raw material, anyone in business. Once you make a product, you almost ruin good raw material into a product if the product is not marketable. Shalosh al shalosh only la'anim udachazin, lashidim leichazin. In other words, it's less significant than threads of shasi and eidav. And therefore, you cannot learn it from the kal v'chomer. And that's why you need to have the vav and the hay. So, tam the kos v'kra, holi kos v'kra, loy gamrinan. We're going to have a little bit of a back and forth in this. Why don't we say that the vav and the hay is coming to include shloisha al shloisha, b'shar begadim? How great is that? Which is really the machlokes that we're having over here between Abaye and Rava. So this now will be focusing on Abaye. Abaye holds that biblically, both of them, everyone holds Shar Begadim, and everyone, Tanei Rabbi Yishmael, even according to Rava, Shar Begadim is not included. Let's read inside the Rashi, 11 lines before the bottom. Why don't we say the Vav and the Hay is to include Shloisha? Guys, just remember, the Shloisha with Tvachim, the bigger garment. In other words, V'shalosh shel shalosh b'tzemeru pishtim. Rashi is adding, the Gemara is not saying that it should not be included. That Kavamin is based, let us still use the kal v'chomer. Even though we just explained that it's not such a good kal v'chomer, when the Gemara, the ones who asked in the yeshiva, let's use the vav and the hay, l'rabbis 3 by 3 by other fibers, they're not negating this din that by tzemer pishtim, even shalosh al shalosh is matama, but they're saying, no, let's use the kal v'chomer. So shloisha and shalosh, tzemer pishtim is normally kal v'chomer. That's really the kasha. And let's use the vav and the hay, l'rabbi shar begadim, gavaldik. That's going to change everything, because if you have a allusion to shar begadim in Tumas Soras, which is like the prototype, then it's going to include all the then it's going to include shar begadim everywhere. So Gemara says it can't be. Amar Kra answers the Gemara, since the Torah says beged semer upishtim. What did we say before? Klal uprat, my friends. Klal uprat ein bechlal ela masha beprat. You can't include, when you have a klal, the Torah specifies beged semer and beged pishtim. Nothing will include anything that goes against the klal uprat.
You can't use the
so and it makes sense. So we'll go back. So it makes sense that the kal v'chomer wouldn't be good enough for the shalosh al shalosh. You need to have the vav and hay. Okay. No, beged semer upishtim in midachrin aloy. Frag the Gemara ve'ema. Why don't we say that ki imayit? Why? You're right that the Torah was mafaret. What is the Torah mafaret, Shuki? Semer upishtim. But still, say that semer upishtim only ein locha ela mashu is only regarding shalosh al shalosh. The Torah was never. We're only speaking about 3 and 3. The Torah is not speaking about 3 tfachim. Maybe by shloisha al shloisha, the Torah was not excluding that.
Even other...
Shabigodim, Gavaldik. The Gemara says no, because it says beged semed, beged pish. The Torah uses the words beged twice. Trei me'utiksiv. The Torah could have read beged semed upishtim. The Torah does write beged semed beged pishtim. You know why the Torah repeats the words beged twice? To be medayik, that our prat isn't only 3 by 3 finger breadths. Chad lemeutei mishalosh al shalosh, v'chad lemeutei mishloisha al shloisha. Very good. We're going to stop early. I just want to share a gavaldik concept that you should know, that what taka makes Semen Upishtim unique. This we know, Alpi Hasidus, we have this in Kabbalah, that semen, that linen is like the pure physical expression of Midas HaChesed, Alpi Kabbalah. And Pishtan is an expression of Gevura. And this din, that only a little bit is considered something chashuv, is so emes. We're not talking about together. A bissel chesed. We know in our life, a little bit of chesed. How do you feel when someone does a little bit of chesed? Taketz and moededik. And also in the reverse, that even when gevura is needed, I think to have the seichel, a little bit of gevura. When you need doicha, you know that I have a small doicha, not yamin doicha. That's the power. A little bit of good, and not to be more gevuradik than a little bit. Chevra, a lot more to be continued.